Oh, that's an open box deal on that AS Rock.
And with that, we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 14 of the TechForge podcast. I am your host, Ned, aka Dynamo Ned. And I am joined once again this evening by my ever faithful co-hosts, Jason and Hunter.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey yo. Hola mio.
All right. Well,
Where'd my neck go?
if you've been following tech this week, then you know what we're probably going to be talking about. Yes, it is the launch of the RTX 2080 and 2080 Ti that we're going to be focusing on this week. But there are a few other bits of tech news that we're going to be discussing this evening. So let's hop right into it. And this first bit is technically not tech, but it is important because it's where we buy a lot of our tech. Yes, we're talking about the Newegg hack. This is coming from Zach Whitaker over at TechCrunch. Hackers stole customer credit cards in Newegg data breach. Apparently, for over a month, Newegg had hackers injecting 15 lines of card skimming code on the online retailer's payments page. It was confirmed to have run from August the 14th through September the 18th. And so it's unclear how many customers were affected or whether it included all customers. The people who found the particular exploit over at Risk IQ, I've linked that article in the article links down below as well. His name is Jonathan Klinchma. And basically what they were able to determine is that on August 13th, a group of hackers operating the MageCart malware registered a domain called neweggStats.com with the intent of blending in with Newegg's primary domain. After that, they installed a poison certification that and also included an attack on the customers of Newegg.com and placed skimmer code on the payments page.
Which that kind of freaks me out, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I've done business within that time frame. Or made a purchase or two.
In particular, the page that would produce the skimmer was secure.newegg.com/globalshopping/checkoutstep2.aspx, which was integrated into the checkout process.
Wow.
The reason they were able to recognize this is because the code that was used was identical to one that was used with the similar MageCart malware on the British Airways site a few months ago. And they know that the skimmer originally became active around August 14th and was removed on September 18th. So if you purchased anything during that time period, you may want to ask Newegg. Newegg so far has not provided any details on who had their information skimmed or what information was captured, if any. And so I'm sure that's being investigated, and we will find out shortly.
Yeah, I got one of those emails the other day. Freaked me out. Freaked me out.
What did it say?
1 second. Important notice about your account. Yesterday we learned one of our servers had been injected with malware, which may have allowed some of your information to be acquired or accessed by a third party. The malware was quite sophisticated and We are conducting extensive research to determine exactly what information may have been acquired or accessed and how many customers may have been impacted. We will keep you up to date with our progress and work to ensure that doesn't happen again. The malware is no longer on our site, and we will be doing our best to bring the culprits to justice. We have not determined which customer accounts have been affected, but out of an abundance of caution, we are alerting those accounts at risk as soon as possible so that they can keep an eye on their accounts for any suspicious activity. We hope by alerting you quickly to help prevent any misuse of information that may have been acquired or accessed. By Friday, we will publish an FAQ that will answer common questions we get. We will send you a link as soon as it goes live. We will also publish the link on our social media platforms. We want to make sure you are completely informed. We're very sorry. Circumstances have warranted this message. However, we are working diligently to address the issue and will provide additional information to you shortly. Sincerely, Danny Lee, CEO, Newegg.
Okay, when did you get that? Because I'm not seeing it.
I received it September 19th at 10:50 a.m. So yesterday morning. The email address that it came from was info@newegg.com.
It might have been that because you did business, like you said, you purchased something on there between the time frame. It was a hack.
Yeah, and I had some weird issue. I had to cancel one of my purchases. I was trying to buy stuff for the backup gaming rig. I was trying to buy the 2600X, the motherboard, and everything.
Yeah.
And it didn't go through, and I got mad, and then I canceled the order, called my bank, and called them, called my bank again, and then I was so angry that I drove the 2 or 3 hours to Micro Center and bought the stuff and came back. So, and yeah, I heart. If I could wear a T-shirt that said "I heart Micro Center," I would right now, because I'm like, they're my jam right now. I'm in love with the Micro Center, except for their video card sales. Their video card sales are ridiculous, except for Zotac Minis, which are amazing.
Yeah, it's really hard to deny that if you have a Micro Center close by, that's where you can get some of the best PC parts deals, at least when it comes to motherboards and CPUs, I know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And just general sales. Their general sales are usually pretty good. Anyway, not to segue from the Newegg Tube talk. Topic.
Indeed. So Klinchma, who wrote the article for Risk IQ, said the breach of Newegg shows the true extent of MageCart operators' reach. These attacks are not confirmed or not confined to certain geolocations or specific industries. Any organization that processes payments online is a target.
And I want to say I've always had confidence in Newegg security. Like, I'm sure they use some of the better security that's probably available. I don't know that for a fact. Pretty scary stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, they also said that the attack on Newegg shows that while third parties have been a problem for websites, as was the case in the Ticketmaster breach, self-hosted scripts can help attackers move and evolve, in this case, changing the actual payment processing page to place their skimmer. And so it goes back to the old adage that I learned back when I was going through my network administration classes. There are two types of systems: those that have been compromised and those that you don't know are compromised yet.
Yeah. Pretty scary stuff, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be. It certainly can be. But let's move away from that unpleasantness and get to actually talking about some real hardware.
Yay!
So this comes from Anon Tech, and it is AMD launches Ryzen 7 2800H and Ryzen 5 2600H APUs for high-performance laptops. So up to this point, we have had Ryzen APUs for laptops, but they've been relatively low-power variants. In particular, the Ryzen 5 2500U and the Ryzen 7 2700U. Again, the U designation referring to ultrabook or ultra low power.
Oh, okay.
And so they read like they're variants of the 2400G, honestly.
That's not an unreasonable assumption to make. Basically, the Ryzen 5 2600H will sport a Vega 8 graphics engine with 4 cores, 8 threads, running at 3.2 gigahertz and boosting to 3.6, whereas the Ryzen 7 2800H will feature 4 cores, 8 threads with a Vega 11 GPU at 3.3 gigahertz with a max turbo of 3.8. Both will support dual-channel DDR4 3200 RAM. And so AMD did not release a press release for this particular release, but simply added it to their list of products. And so it's interesting they don't note that, but the fact that they add them to the product list means we could see them in the very near future. And it'll be good to see AMD Ryzen CPUs making their way into the high-end space, which up to this point have largely been dominated by the Core i7 and Core i9 CPUs from Intel.
Yeah, the only problem I see with this is if for competition, there are laptops with i7 whatever that has 6 cores, 12 threads. And this only has 4 cores, 8 threads. So competing core to thread count, this is not really... It doesn't really seem like new news. This is, like Jason said, basically a 2400G in a mobile platform.
Well,
so it's not.
Yeah, I agree with you. Honestly, though, if you do get a laptop variant with the Vega 11 part and 3200 megahertz RAM with an SSD, that's a pretty solid laptop, man.
Yeah.
And the fact that it has a 45-watt TDP puts it right up there with the Core i7 8750H and the Core i9 8950, whatever they're calling it now.
Yeah.
And we've seen the Core i9 in particular, being the hexa-core, it has problems. In particular, it throttles really, really hard
overheating problems.
Unless you put a proper cooler on it, which Apple found out much to their chagrin.
Well, so did Razer.
Yeah, Razer did too. Just to be fair.
All that is a highly clocked i7, mobile i7 part. That's all that is.
Yeah.
They stick the i9, name on it. It's you don't put that part in a slim laptop form factor.
And they don't think about how hot it's going to get until it overheats and throttles or shuts down.
Right, and I think that was the big thing that bit both of them in the rear was they didn't redesign their cooling solutions for either of for the higher end CPUs. Which, I mean, why would you? It's supposed to be the same TDP as the i7 part.
Yeah. But they don't. But their brilliant engineers don't realize that Intel TDP rating is taken at idle or close to idle. Very light, very, very light workload, if any. And in Apple's case, they didn't even put a proper VRM on there. People don't understand that the current cool running low power or better power consuming parts are actually the AMD parts right now. Or your super mobile Intel parts. Those i7 and i9s, even mobile, those things can cook. Yes, they're very good performers, but those TDP ratings are not accurate at all.
It's if you want that kind of cool and quiet operation, that's why the U series parts for both Intel and AMD exist.
Yep.
They're designed to work in a 15-watt TDP, and they're not bad CPUs. I've worked on a laptop that has a Core i5-8250U with its 4 cores and 8 threads. And it's a far more pleasant experience than working on my similar laptop that's about 4 years older, which has a Core i7-4702MQ. Again, same 4-core, 8-thread, but its base clock is only 2.2 gigahertz, whereas the 8250U, I think, its base clock is something like 2.4, 2.6. I'd have to look it up.
And also thinking about it, these two Vega-enabled Ryzen mobile chips are actually really good compared to having a separate GPU chip and a separate CPU chip, and that making the price go up more and the heat go up and all those issues, but having it all in one may have heat issues. We don't know about the cooler of these laptops, what laptops, but I would think that it's a little bit better or a little bit more performing than the Intel Nvidia. Probably going to be cheaper because it's a Ryzen.
And that's something we'll have to be on the lookout for. I mean, according to this, the Vega 8 CPU or the Vega 8 GPU in the 2600H is going to have 512 stream processors. That puts it at roughly half as many as an RX 560.
It's also clocked lower though than the Vega 11.
The Vega 11 in the 2800H has 704 stream processors, which puts it in roughly RX 550 territory. Although, again, you are limited by the fact that you're using DDR4 system RAM versus dedicated GDDR5 video RAM. But still, clocked at 1300 megahertz, that's not a slouch.
It's not a miracle working processor either, or a video part, but it's still relatively really good.
Yeah, I could totally see it be something acceptable for, in a laptop form factor for someone who wants to play esports titles on the go.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing will shred esports titles, man. No problem. 1080p 60 all day long.
I would be eager to compare something like this again to my 4 or 5 year old Intel laptop, which has a GT 750M. That just in particular, I've played World Warships on that machine, and it routinely will pull about between 45 and 60 FPS at 1080p.
What detail level? Medium?
Medium.
Medium's pretty good, actually. Medium looks pretty decent.
And usually the M chips are like a down throttled regular dedicated card. Because my 940M is like a low clocked, I guess GTX 960 or 950.
That wouldn't surprise me. And like I said, it's an older CPU GPU combination.
Yeah.
From the Haswell and Maxwell days, respectively.
So the stock 2400G with 3200 RAM or 32 megahertz RAM, 3200 megahertz RAM was running World of Warships 1080p at between 80 and 90 FPS on medium detail.
Okay.
So this probably will get close to that. The Vega 11 this mobile Vega 11 here. I assume it'd get close to that if it had 3200 megahertz RAM.
Right. And I think that will be the deciding factor in a lot of the shipping laptops. The big problem we saw with the 2500U and the 2700U was a lot of times the laptop it shipped in, I know this was the problem with the HP Envy X360, was that it was shipping with either single channel RAM or it was shipping with small amounts of dual channel.
Ugh.
That's ridiculous. You're crippling it.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous. I know they're saving like $1 per, for every laptop per 1,000 or whatever, but that just drives me crazy when manufacturers do that kind of silly shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess we can all be on the lookout now for laptops with the 2800H and the 2600H.
I'm not a fan of laptops whatsoever outside of a work environment, but if I was shopping for one, I would actually consider getting that 2800H. But it would have to have dual channel RAM, right around 3200 megahertz. You know what I mean? So, and an SSD.
At least, I would say the ability to put more RAM in it if it doesn't come with enough.
Right.
Because it's not that bad to, in my mind at least, to buy a laptop that has less hardware. Like if it had a 5400 RPM hard drive, but like $200 cheaper than one with SSD or faster. And if you have a drive laying around, even if it's a 7200 RPM, just take out the crap one and put the good one in, or take out the crap hard drive, the slow hard drive, and put a spare SSD in, and then buy another stick of RAM if it has one stick.
As long as the money makes sense.
Yeah.
As long as it's ballpark decent.
Well, for comparison, I remember I was looking at this laptop not too long ago. This one's coming from Best Buy. It's an Acer Nitro 5 15.6-inch laptop with a Ryzen 5 2500U and a Radeon RX 560X, which is the 560X is basically their mobile variant of the RX 560. It comes with a 256 gigabyte solid state drive, and Best Buy 8 gigs of DDR4 RAM. Unfortunately, they don't say whether it's single channel or dual channel, but they're asking $719.99 for it.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
For an entry-level, quote-unquote, gaming laptop with an Ryzen 5 2500U, which has solid integrated graphics to begin with, and it also comes with a discrete RX 560X graphics card, you're looking at a pretty solid package there. Now, imagine the same thing with a Ryzen 5 2600H and say, I don't know, an RX 560X or an RX 580X.
If it had 580 in it, that would definitely be awesome.
Just
a
don't
580.
Just don't be mistaken. These are using Ryzen first gen parts in them.
Of course. And so I think that kind of basically acting as, I mean, for comparison, the Intel Core i5 variant with the 8250U that I was talking about earlier and a GTX 1050 comes with a 1 terabyte hard drive is roughly the same price. It's $699.99. So remember,
yeah, I'd still rather have the Ryzen part though.
Agreed. But that's just putting that out there. If we could see, a Ryzen 5 2600H with, an RX 570, RX 580 class GPU in a laptop,
that would be really good
for about the $800, $900 price point in a 15.6-inch form factor. That would overall be a really solid do-everything laptop.
That'd be extremely solid, yeah.
Especially since the 580 is like yes and no on the same level as a 1060, and the cheapest 1060 laptop, i7 laptop, is $1,000, either 99 or 1,049, or even more than that. That would be really good to have a Ryzen, same comparative or somewhat comparative or competitive laptop at $800 or $900. I would definitely go with that.
Aren't the mobile Radeons even more stripped down though? I want to say the mobile GTXs are.
Well, it's not mobile GTXs. It's full-fledged GTXs. Well, no. Yeah, they are a little bit. They are a little bit stripped down.
Yeah, but the mobile GTXs are they're essentially the same GPUs and RAM type as the desktop part. Just
right. They're significantly downclocked.
Yeah,
right.
It's definitely downclocked. Basically like a EVGA downturn card.
Whereas the mobile Radeon parts are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the same case for the current Radeons, but typically the last generation or two, like your mobile 480, for example, was actually like a 470 or 460 desktop variant.
I do believe I know at least with the RX 560, because I did a little research into this, the RX 560X is basically an RX 560 downclocked. So roughly, again, I believe the 560 is the 768 stream processor version, whereas the 560X is the one that's the 1024. At least in the mobile space. I know with the cards, the desktop cards, they didn't specify, but
and too bad the laptops don't have an easy overclock button. Actually, there are some laptops that have overclocking. And I know there was one, I think it was Asus laptop that had a attachable 240 millimeter radiator in an attachable thing that goes on the back of the laptop, and it hooks by I forgot what it was. It's not tubes to connect to it. It's some kind of connector.
It was
that
a
connects to the laptop.
It was a custom set of barbs.
Oh, okay, yeah. And it would feed the liquid cooling into the CPU chamber thing.
That's really gimmicky.
It was a cool concept, but that really makes it a desktop, because you can't take both pieces up with you, and unless you, I don't know, it makes the whole thing not so mobile.
Yeah, it's exceedingly gimmicky, but
yes,
that's not a desktop.
It's what I'd like to call the desktop replacements. It's those huge laptops that are really designed to be only kind of semi-portable.
Yeah,
The 17 to 18 inch, which I don't like that size.
they
15
want to
point-
be they want to be desktops, but they're
Yeah.
not anywhere close, man.
Yeah, I like the 15.6 because at least it's portable.
Yeah,
Yeah. The 17 and 18-inch laptops as desktop replacements, I like to think of them as portable workstations. Because
Yeah,
that's what I got my 17-inch laptop for. Was I was in school at the time. I was taking classes for my network administration degree, and I needed something that had sufficient power to be a workstation, but was slim enough and portable enough that I could take it back and forth with me to class.
which that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. But
yeah.
I just don't like when laptop makers try and make their laptops more desktop-y. Like, there's nothing they can do to come close to the performance of a desktop. They can't.
Yeah.
Because the desktop parts consume more power for a reason.
And desktops are customizable.
Right.
Well, non-Apple desktops are customizable.
Yeah.
By the way, I stand corrected on the RX 560 versus 560X issue. They're actually both 1024 stream processors.
Okay.
But the 560X is clocked from 1,172 to 1,275 megahertz, whereas the 560 is clocked at 1,090 megahertz to 1,290 megahertz.
Gotcha.
So the 560 clocks higher, but it has a lower base clock speed, whereas the RX 560X has a higher base clock, but very slightly lower boost.
Interesting. So depending on how they tuned the 560X, it could, in most workloads, actually perform slightly better, depending on how they tuned it.
Right, because except in workloads where it's pushed to its very maximum, it's going to perform. It's going to idle at a much higher speed.
Yeah, which I don't know enough about the GPU boosting tune in the Radeons to really comment. I know in Polaris, those things will boost all over the place. But that's Polaris. Or not Polaris, Pascal. Sure.
All right. We've been talking a lot about AMD. Well, Intel got back into the news this week with a very odd bit of news. And that's the fact that for one of their variants for the H310 chipset, they're actually going to be moving back from 14 nanometer to 22 nanometer for their process node. And so Tom's Hardware wrote this. They were able to confirm through multiple sources that Intel would be fabbing their H310C chipset on a 22 nanometer process to try and free up more of their 14 nanometer process for CPU production. Contrary to prior reports, Intel has confirmed they will be manufacturing these parts, not TSMC. And of course, this is just more and more evidence and more indicative of how much trouble Intel has had with their chronically delayed 10 nanometer process. That I remember way back when Haswell first came out, the promise was, we'll see 10 nanometer in 2016. Well, it's now 2018, and 10 nanometer is currently scheduled for sometime in 2019 or 2020.
All the while, AMD is just ticking away. They're looking across the pond, and they're saying, "Yeah, well, we're sampling 7 nanometer.
Yep.
We have no problem keeping up with 12 and 14 right now." So don't worry, folks. 780's coming. We'll be on time.
And that's actually something that'll come up when we talk about the RTX cards, about the fact that RTX wasn't originally intended to be 12 nanometer.
Oh, it wasn't. Was it
No, it was
originally
not.
supposed to be 7?
It was originally supposed to be based on Samsung's 10 nanometer process.
Oh, maybe that's why the GPUs are so monolithic now for the RTXs, because they were huge, man.
Anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
So Intel's H310C is going to be manufactured on a 22 nanometer process. For those who don't remember, 22 nanometer has not been used since Haswell. So that was the 4000 series.
Yeah. You're talking 2013, 2014, 2015. So, yeah.
Yeah, you'll remember Broadwell was the first to move to the 14 nanometer node. Followed up by Skylake. And then Kaby Lake was supposed to be the final node on the 14 nanometer process, with Coffee Lake moving to 10 nanometer. But, well, we know how that turned out.
Well, we remember Broadwell, too. Broadwell was delayed very heavily. It pretty much was non-existent. Like, they pretty much essentially went from Haswell directly to Skylake.
Right.
Broadwell was delayed so severely.
Yeah, the funny thing is you can find more Broadwell mobile CPUs than you can Broadwell desktop chips. In fact, I was shocked when, not that long ago, a Broadwell i7 5775C popped up on my local Craigslist.
Nice. That's a rare chip.
It is a rare chip, and they were asking rare chip prices. They wanted $300 for it.
Yeah, right.
And I just kind of chuckled to myself and said, that would be a neat collector's piece, but it's not worth that.
Not worth $300. Yeah, I remember the reviews for the Broadwell i7. It was actually getting slightly worse performance than the Devil's Canyon i7 at the time, because the Devil's Canyon i7 was clocked higher at stock versus the Broadwell i7 desktop part.
Right, but where the 5775C excelled was the fact that it had 128 megabytes of EDRAM soldered onto the die, which basically acted as a level 4 cache. And that gave it really great integrated graphics performance for its time.
Yeah, it had a very strong iGPU.
And it caused some stir in that some people thought that's how Intel was going to proceed to improve their integrated graphics performance. Unfortunately, the 5775C was very expensive to produce with that EDRAM on board. And of course, we know now it didn't turn out that way for Skylake. So this move back to 22 nanometer for the H310C chipset just goes to further illustrate the fact that Intel's fab, at least at the moment, is nearly tapped out in their 14 nanometer production.
Well, there's the i7s and i5s are selling like hotcakes right now, man. And as are motherboard chipsets that support 14 nanometer, like the 370s.
And given that this is a low-end chipset, 22 nanometers increased power and performance implications, or excuse me, increased power consumption and lower performance implications doesn't really matter down at the low end.
Yeah, it's a very minor change. It's not, I mean, it's not that big a deal.
And
honestly,
it does open the door, though, for Intel to consider moving other chipsets over to the 22 nanometer node, which could be interesting. Could we see maybe I doubt we'll see Z390 on the 22 nanometer node, But it wouldn't surprise me after Z390 comes out if we maybe see, say, B360 or H370 move over to the 22 nanometer node.
Well, and since those are mid-range, those are supposed to be mid-range chipsets. If that happens, they're in some trouble. They're in some trouble. So, and it's very likely. I think we'll see the B part before we'll see the other part. But I don't know, man. Interesting.
All right. And we have some more AMD, well, alleged AMD news here.
Sure.
This is a leak, so take that with a grain of salt.
Sure.
But it is a leak, supposedly, of AMD's EPYC Rome 7-nanometer 64-core processor. This leak apparently originally appeared on the Chinese chip forum Chip Hell. And it supposedly shows a 7-nanometer based EPYC Rome CPU sporting 64 cores, achieving a 12,587 in the Cinebench R15 multi-threaded benchmark.
That's crazy.
For comparison, a Core i7-4770K achieves about an 822 in that same benchmark.
Well, for its time, that's pretty good.
And also, for further illustration, the Ryzen Threadripper 2990WX, yes, that insane 32-core, 64-thread CPU, it achieves about a 5500 in Cinebench multi-threaded. So if this is in fact true, where a AMD engineering sample of their Rome CPU at 64 cores is achieving 12,587. Then we have some interesting things to look forward to with Threadripper 3, I think.
Well, not only that, but also Ryzen 7. That's a very realistic and attainable goal at 7 nanometer.
Yeah, I mean, if we just straight up took a Threadripper 2990WX and doubled its core count, if it's achieving a roughly 5,500 Cinebench points, you would assume that doubling the number of cores should lead to, well, if one assumes 100% scaling, that would be around 11,000. Of course, we know it doesn't ever scale 100%, so let's assume 90% scaling. So that means, 10% of 5,500 is 550. So assume right around 10,000. And that's before you include any moves to 7 nanometer or any changes or enhancements in the Zen 2 architecture. That's just using Zen Plus. And so I think 12,587 is not unreasonable for this leak.
No, it's not. 7 nanometer is a huge jump from 12 or 14. Huge.
Now, one thing to note is that if the rumors about this 7 nanometer chip are true, it could be that what AMD is planning to do is to have 8 7 nanometer dies on this EPYC CPU with a 14 nanometer system controller chip interconnecting them all. At least that's what all of the currently available data points to. Adored TV did an excellent video on this when he talked about chiplets and how arranging them can lead to certain performance improvements. And so, if that is indeed what we see, 7 nanometer dies for the actual CPU cores with a 14 nanometer controller chip, I'd say not that long after that, in the next generation, whatever, Ryzen 2 Plus, or Zen 2 Plus architecture, say Ryzen 4000 or, whatever the 4th generation EPYC winds up being, we could see the same structure, but with a 7 nanometer controller chip with improved I/O. And again, I'm totally speculating here, but it would not surprise me at all to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, it'd be interesting, that's for sure. And it really wouldn't be that much of a performance difference, honestly.
And in particular, AMD has mentioned that Rome, which is the code name for the next generation of EPYC CPUs, is designed to compete favorably with Intel's upcoming Ice Lake Xeon processors.
Well, it should, if it's at 7. It should compare extremely favorably. So I'm trying to find the size difference. I want to say 7 nanometers is about 50% smaller than 12.
That's reasonable.
I'm trying to find like actual math though. I can't find. I'm just trying to provide like a real world illustration.
Right. I think it actually works out to something like 43% smaller.
That sounds realistic.
And, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at.
Oh, heck no.
I mean, remember, the last time we saw a die shrink even slightly comparable to this was in the move from 28 nanometer to 14. Or 16.
So if you took current Nvidia Turing die size is 754 square millimeters and used the process AMD is using at 7, that would effectively be what is that? So 754.
So if you reduce it by 43%, roughly, that means it would be roughly 57% the size of the current fabrication process. So if you took that and reduced it down from 12 nanometers to 7, I'm getting roughly 430 millimeters squared. Sorry, you dropped there for a second, Jason, or at least on my end.
Yeah,
I want to say that's around RX 80 size, GPU size.
Okay, so yeah, that's right around Polaris.
So that's like taking an RTX 2080 and shrinking it down to 7 nanometer, and you get a GPU the same size of a RX 580.
That's extremely impressive.
Yeah, that's insanity.
So needless to say, 7 nanometer Rome, 7 nanometer in general is looking really, really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, technically Apple's already released the first 7 nanometer commercially available CPU, but again, that's a mobile CPU that's based on their own proprietary version of ARM's architecture. So, but yeah, I am really excited to see where the industry goes on 7 nanometer. All right. So we talked about all these other things, and they're good and they're interesting. But let's face it, you all are here to talk about the RTX 20 series that just released this week, or at least part of it released this week. So the RTX 2080 and 2080 Ti embargo went up earlier this week on Wednesday, September the 19th. The floodgates opened, and we had all the benchmarks, and the response was interesting, to say the least. Not least of which was the fact that last week, just before the original unboxings and everything, Nvidia released a update on their forums letting everyone know that the RTX 2080 Ti was actually going to be shipping on the 27th instead of the 20th for general availability. And so remember, originally the 2080 and the 2080 Ti were both supposed to ship on September 20th, today, when we're recording this. However, the RTX 2080 Ti was shifted a week later to September 27th. So while there were benchmarks released for the 2080 Ti today, you will not be receiving yours for at least another week.
Well, they're sold out just about everywhere. They are sold out everywhere.
I wouldn't doubt it.
They are indeed pretty much sold out everywhere, and any place that you can get them, they are being charged way, way up from MSRP.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were a lot of tech outlets that reviewed the RTX 2080 and 2080 Ti. Obviously, we don't have the resources to get one of those ourselves. I know I certainly don't.
I don't either.
Mark my words, 2 years I will. 2 years from today.
Awesome.
And so the RTX 2080 and 2080 Ti, there were lots of different places that put out reviews. In the article links down below, I've included links to the TechSpot review and the mega benchmark they did. And the reason I linked theirs is because I think theirs is a pretty balanced view of and summation of what I saw pretty much across all of the TechTube press, all across the traditional tech press, which is, yeah, the cards perform really well, but their pricing is absolutely insane.
Yeah. I saw a video from a couple people, Gamers Nexus, Linus. Linus did a really good video on it. He said, yeah, it's 45% faster than the previous cards, but at 50 to 60, and also UFD Tech said this too, at 50 to 60% more in price doesn't make it really worth it. Plus the fact that we don't have RTX and we don't have ray tracing enabled games yet, so we can't really, nobody can really find out what the benchmarks of those are because we don't have the games yet. It's like that cart before the horse analogy. A bad launch because there's no games that take advantage of the hardware. But I mean, like we talked about previously, every new series is faster, clock speed faster than the previous card or previous generations. And that's still what we're seeing now. But yeah, everybody, especially UFD Tech, said that it's not worth getting.
Yeah.
Yay for the people who already bought them because they're all sold out. And
Well, I don't know if we're necessarily seeing huge clock speed differences between this one versus Pascal. I think the biggest difference is just that the GPUs are so much bigger on the RTX 2080 and the 2080 Ti. I saw the I did see parts of the Gamers Nexus review. It looked interesting. I appreciated him going into detail about how GPU Boost 4 was behaving, and it seemed like in a lot of cases, the newer RTX cards are really thermally throttling down. These are really hot cards, man. Not in performance. They are very good. They are very performant. However, with these huge monolithic GPUs they've got on these things, to get the performance scaling to be something, like they saw from Maxwell to Pascal, they're building these GPUs to be huge monolithic processors, basically, and they are consuming a lot of power.
Well, it's also the fact of the ray tracing cores, the tensor cores, and the other cores. That because my research of ray tracing is that movies have ray tracing in the movie, like it's the movie tech going to the video card, and that used to take like days or weeks or months to do all that stuff. And so that makes sense for the heat production of these cores, and that's why they need to have bigger cooling on them. I wonder how the performance of the either custom or AIB water cooling cards are going to be compared to the previous generation, or the current, that now previous generation Pascal, or even if custom liquid cooling is going to be beneficial because of the heat production of the new cards. That's going to be interesting to see the reviews.
Well, that's another reason why I decided to link the TechSpot review, because one of the things that Steve notes in his giant benchmark that he did is the cards largely seem to be tapped out. That like Pascal, in particular, did you know the Founders Edition this time is shipping overclocked over the reference spec?
Heard about that.
Yeah, that was in some of the press following the Ginseng Wang release. That was in some
press
of that
releases.
Yeah, stating that the Founders Edition parts were supposed to be binned better.
Yeah.
Than the aftermarket parts, essentially. Just the aftermarket parts will have potentially better VRM, you know what I mean? The standard shit. Like better VRM, better
cooling,
PCB, better cooling, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. In fact, I like Brad Chakos's review probably the best because they didn't come out and recommend the cards yet, because there's no software out yet to support ray tracing. He did indicate that in some of the demos he's seen that took advantage of some of the underlying technology, said that it's a super game changer. Like, it looks amazing. But there's no games out yet that can support it. So essentially there's going to be some workloads where the card sends data up into the cloud, and it interprets what the image is supposed to look like, and then it streams it back to the card in a seamless manner, and it's supposed to look amazing. But there's no software out yet to support it. So until there are games out that support it in a decent number, Brad Chakos is not going to recommend the card.
Right, and that's why I did link Brad's article where he talks about, RTX 2080 versus the 1080 Ti. Which one should you buy? Because the 2080 and the 1080 Ti, it turns out, perform almost identically in most games. And so that basically what the consensus I've seen is this. Compared to their previous generation counterparts, the GTX 1080 versus the RTX 2080 the RTX 2080 performs about 30% better. Likewise, the 2080 Ti versus the 1080 Ti, the 2080 Ti performs about 30% better.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that currently the RTX 2080 is going for $140 more than the 1080 Ti.
Yeah, that's the price is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
There's no software out to support the features, and the price is the problem. I'd rather have a 1080 Ti, honestly.
Right now, I absolutely agree with you. The only situation where I could recommend RTX 2080 is if you needed a workstation card, then you had a workload that could specifically leverage those tensor cores and those ray tracing cores, which unless you have a very specific, I think it's the latest beta build of Blender. Try saying that 5 times fast. If you have the latest beta build of Blender, then it's able to utilize those resources. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Astounding effect.
Another use case. Go ahead.
But beyond that very specific use case, right now the 1080 Ti makes more sense for more people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And there's one other use case, and it's specifically for the 2080 Ti, is if you've got a super uber expensive 4K 5,000 hertz monitor, and you want unbelievable performance. Like the 2080 Ti is the first real individual card that can do 4K, high frame rate. You know what I mean? Like if you've got one of those crazy, monstrous, unbelievable displays that costs more than my
$2,000.
Yeah, you're basically looking at a setup that costs more than my 2018 Hyundai Tucson. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, if you're one of those people, then the RTX 2080 Ti makes sense.
Yeah,
that's the only use case I can think of.
If you are the person who absolutely must game at 4K 144 hertz on your, $2,000 Asus G-Sync monitor, then yeah, the 2080 Ti makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that extremely fringe and very expensive case, not so much.
Right. Where the rest of reality and the rest of the world pretty much sits. Yeah. I agree. And, the rest of us don't have money to buy 24 karat gold monitors that have 6,000 hertz refresh rates. And, the rest of us are sitting on 1440p 75 hertz or 1080p 75 hertz monitors, and we're running 1070s and 1060s and stuff like that. So
yeah, and right now with my current setup, I'm trying to judge whether it'd make more sense to go 1080p 144 hertz or to do 1440p at 75 hertz.
Right. Probably similar price points, I guess.
I know the monitors I've been looking at. In particular, I've been looking at the Pixio PX277.
Good monitor.
It runs about $300 to $350, depending on whether you find it on sale or not. 1440p, technically capable of 144 hertz with FreeSync. But then I also have monitors like the ViewSonic XG2402, which I've also been looking at. About $225. It's only 1080p, but it's also 144 hertz FreeSync monitor.
Well,
in case you haven't guessed, I want a higher refresh rate monitor because I'm currently using a 60 hertz monitor.
Well, I know 1440p, 144 hertz. You're going to have trouble finding an AMD card that can do that. But 144 hertz, 1080, you should have some success there if you're looking to beg apart.
Honestly, the main reason I would look at 1440p, 144 hertz is because typically the 75 hertz 1440p monitors don't have low frame rate compensation.
Oh, they don't?
Generally, they don't.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Huh. So the 144 hertz has better low frame rate compensation than the 75.
Exactly, because 75 hertz only works from roughly 40 FPS to 75. Whereas with 144 hertz, you can get low frame rate compensation from between, I think it's 35 FPS and anything below 144 hertz.
Interesting. We're looking at you, 7 nanometer Navi.
Indeed. However, if your RTX itch must absolutely be scratched, thankfully there is a set of games that Nvidia has announced will be coming with their real-time ray tracing features and their DLSS, their dynamic level super sampling. I may have that wrong. Deep learning super sampling, excuse me. And so I have an article linked to Kit Guru, which has a list. The 11 games that will support real-time ray tracing are Assetto Corsa Competiciones, Atomic Heart, Battlefield 5, or Battlefield V, if you want to be that kind of person.
Oh, gosh.
Control, Enlisted, Justice, JX3, MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries, Metro Exodus, Project DH, and Shadow the Tomb Raider. Of course, most of those are going to have RT added either when they launch, which they've not launched yet, or they're getting after launch patches such as Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Meanwhile, 25 games have announced support for DLSS, including Ark Survival Evolved, Atomic Heart, Dauntless, Final Fantasy 15, Fractured Lands, Hitman 2, Islands of the Nine, Justice JX3, MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries, of course, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, Remnant from the Ashes, Serious Sam 4, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, The Forge Arena, We Happy Few, Darksiders 3, Deliver Us the Moon Fortuna, Fear the Wolves, Hellblade Sinuous Sacrifice, Kinetic, Outpost Zero, Overkill's The Walking Dead, Scum, and Stormdivers.
So by the time the software comes out, we're going to have Navi. Just saying.
You're probably not wrong.
And RTXs will be selling like hotcakes. So.
Yep.
All right, one last news item here, because we got to say some good stuff about RTX. We have this one from WCCF Tech. NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 Ti smashes all 3D Mark benchmark records with a 2.4 gigahertz GPU and 17 gigabits per second memory overclocked on liquid nitrogen.
Wow. 17 gigabits.
That's insanity.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Ned. You've just quantified insanity.
Well, hopefully they can add it to the DSM-5, you know?
I wonder if that's... I know that Steve from Gamers Nexus and Paul from Parles Hardware were in a overclock war last night on
Really?
YouTube Live. Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, Steve was YouTubing live. Paul wasn't. And they talked to each other, and they challenged each other in Twitter.
That'd be fun.
So I was watching it. I don't know if Steve. I don't know if they were using LN2. They probably were. I think Steve was using LN2, but I don't remember what the final clock score was. It was probably same or relatively same as this.
Well, this was done in Time Spy Extreme, and the 2080 Ti achieved a overall score of 9,275 in Time Spy Extreme, which puts it at the top spot for 3D Mark records. And of course, it was achieved by none other than the person who's consistently at the top of these scoreboards, Mr. Kingpin himself.
This just in, Core i10, 7 core, 14 thread, 5 gigahertz, 22 nanometer part, released, 500 watt TDP, requires a 480 millimeter radiator just to cool it. That's going to be in my nightmares tonight. I can just see it.
It's $1,723. Oh, wait. Did you make that up?
I did just make that up, sir. And you're welcome.
Because I'm looking at it. It says... Yeah, I think I just fell into that.
That's why I said Core i10, 22 nanometer, 500 watt TDP. 14 thread.
Yeah, we do love to poke fun at Intel, don't we?
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. They make excellent processors. And I admit, I have a bit of a fondness for AMD from back in the day. But let me tell you, I've used my fair share of Intel rigs as well.
I've been very tempted to get an 8700K. Very tempted. I don't have a need, and I'm perfectly in love with Ryzen everything, but just to have something to test on.
Yeah, just to have a comparison.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to build an Intel sleeper and a Ryzen sleeper, just to compare the two.
Ooh, I'd love to see your Ryzen sleeper if you ever get around to it.
Yeah, I've been planning on it, trying to see what configuration I want to do. I'm trying to see if I can put a 240 radiator in it in the case that I have, and it's going to take modification of the case inside. So I really want to put a 240 radiator because I really want to see if I can put. I either want to do 240. I either want to do 2 AIOs on the CPU, one on CPU and one on GPU, or if I can do the EK all-in-one kit. I think it would look amazing if I do the EK all-in-one kit. It just depends on if I can actually do it.
Yeah, just be careful. Just be careful with that EK kit. If you ever do decide to expand it, remember it's an all aluminum kit, so you need to make sure that any of the other stuff you added was also aluminum.
And that's the problem. There's not much aluminum stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, technically you can go with mixed metals, but you just have to remember to include a kill coil.
Yeah.
That price point, though, man, that's so tempting. Because it's about the same price as a Kraken.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you can find a 240 AIO for around $80 if you shop around, but
I just have to see if I can. I want to fit. The only place really I can do is fit it in the front. If I have to cut out, the hard drive bay. I have to cut out the part or all of the optical drive bay to put it in the front. Really, that's the only place to put it, unless I just want to poke holes in the top and then put in the top.
Gotcha. Well, honestly, you can't go wrong with the Ryzen 5 2600 or 2600X, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
gaming wise, those things are just amazing value. They're
Oh yeah.
they're fantastic. Stock that 2600X is just that thing. That thing it really amazes me.
I am getting the 80 millimeter to 120 millimeter fan adapter tomorrow, and I have a 120 millimeter AIO, so I'm going to use those two in the current case for the sleeper build to plan out what I can do. I need to see the size of the adapter and the AIO, the length of it from the back of the case, and see if it doesn't interfere with whatever CPU cooler I go with.
So what do you need? About 50 millimeters? So how thick is a stock fan? 25, and then the radiator is 27, so 52?
Yeah.
I want to say you need, what, about 52 millimeters of clearance plus whatever that adapter is.
Mm-hmm. Because
So,
if I can put an AIO on the CPU, that'll cut down on top space to where if like the fan adapter would be here, and then the radiator's here, and then the fan for the radiator's here, that's going to come out a lot. So I can't really have a tall cooler. If I want to do air cooler, I'd have to have a liquid cooler on the CPU.
well, even the cheapest of the 240 AIOs is going to be equivalent or slightly better than the most expensive and the best air cooler you can get.
Yeah, especially now that the prices are going down.
Yeah, and honestly, after having a couple of AIOs now, I'm in love, man. AIOs are just fantastic value.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you are looking for a deal on 120 millimeter AIO, today's Newegg deal, they have a Corsair Hydro H60, the 2018 edition, single 120 millimeter fan, liquid CPU cooler for $60.
That's a deal.
Oh yeah.
That is a deal.
And speaking of other deals, we do have a few deals that we included. They're all for SSDs this week for some reason. It's just, I went around looking for deals, and all the deals I found were solid-state drives, other than that CPU cooler. So, the first one I found was a SanDisk 1 terabyte Ultra 3D. It is currently on sale for $149.49. So
that's crazy.
A 1 terabyte SSD for about $150. Now, I've seen cheaper prices than this. Not a whole lot cheaper, but I have seen cheaper. But not from a trusted brand like SanDisk.
Yeah. And that also depends on the read and write speed.
This one is claiming 560 megabyte reads and 530 megabyte writes. Of course, that's for sequential. We all know that sequential basically is only good for benchmarks. The random reads and writes, they don't quote, but still 560, 530 is pretty solid for a SATA 3 base drive.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. And I've worked with the SanDisk Ultra line. Those are very, very good SSDs.
They are solid budget entries.
Oh, yeah.
They're not quite 860 EVOs, which we have one of those today, too, though in a slightly different form factor. This is for a 500 gigabyte Samsung 860 EVO in the M.2 form factor, but it is using a SATA controller. So it too is limited to 560 megabyte per second reads and 520 megabyte per second writes, but it is an M.2, which means it will connect directly to your motherboard and you don't have to worry about SATA power or data.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that advantage. And it's on sale right now for $108, which for an 860 EVO is a good deal.
You cannot go wrong with the Samsung part as an SSD.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those things are magic.
It's like top of the line right now.
Straight up magic. Yep.
But not all of us have quite $100 to burn on an SSD, which brings me to my last deal for this evening. It is the ADATA SU655 SSD. Now, the one I have linked is the 480 gigabyte version, which is currently selling for $69.99 plus free shipping with Amazon Prime on Amazon. But that's not where the real deal here is. The real deal is if you just absolutely have to have a budget entry-level drive. The 120 gigabyte drive right now for the ADATA SU655 is $24.99.
Oh, jeez.
That's cheaper than regular hard drives.
That is less than the cost of an extra large pizza where I live.
Even the 480 gig price on Amazon is the price of a regular hard drive. Not the same size, but regular hard drives price $70.
And even the 240 gigabyte version is still a steal at $39.99. $40 for a 240 gigabyte SSD. I'll take that deal all day long.
Yeah, that's a good OS drive.
I mean, my current setup, I use a 240 gig drive. I'm actually looking to upgrade to a 500 gigabyte drive here soon. And so yes, if you're on the budget end, there are SSDs out there for you as well. But if you're looking for a bit more capacity, that Samsung 860 EVO is a solid choice if you're looking for an M.2. Or if you want something in a 2.5-inch form factor, then that 1 terabyte SanDisk is an excellent choice as well.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'll have links to all of those down below in the description. I'll put a link to the One Tab page, which will have links to all the articles we've discussed, as well as these deals.
Nice.
And so that'll be down below in the description. And with that, gentlemen, I've exhausted the topics that I had planned for this evening. Are there any others that you all would like to discuss before we close it down for the evening?
No.
I think you covered everything, Mr. Ned.
Yeah. We'll find out what happens next week.
Yeah, we'll stay tuned for more benchmarks on RTX 20 series. We'll keep our eyes peeled for Navi 7 nanometer. And I think Intel is going to have their 9th gen CPUs coming out in the not too distant future. So let's keep an eye open for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
Of course, if all the rumors are true, 9th gen is just a rebadged 8th gen with overclocks. Except for the 9900K.
Oh, yeah.
14 plus. Plus.
Anyway.
Rebadge.
Rebadged.
Rebrand.
You heard it here. Hunter's trademarking rebadged. Trademark. If you use it, you got to pay Hunter. Otherwise, I'm going to be making a visit to your door, and I'm going to be eating really gassy food, and I'm going to be farting a lot.
And he'll sit on you, probably.
Yeah, and I've got a belly.
I'm going to have to edit this out, aren't I?
Probably.
Anyway. Yes. Honestly, I probably won't, but... Anyway, if you've made it this far, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for putting up with our silliness this evening. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion of the tech talk for this week. I've been Dynamo Ned. My co-hosts have been Jason and Hunter.
Yep.
And we'd like to thank you for joining us once again. Of course, if you enjoyed this content, you can find all kinds of other great content here on our CrossForge Gaming YouTube channel. You can always find us on Twitch at twitch.tv/CrossForgeGaming. You can also find links to our social media groups, our Facebook, our YouTube, and to our Discord server down below if you want to interact with our communities in those places. We also have a Patreon if you want to access the audio versions of these podcasts. Now, with all that said, I've been Dynamo Ned. This has been TechForge. And remember, Jesus loves you. And when life gets rough, forge on.
Yep, forge on.